So what we're trying to do with the Craft Coin company was to actually create repeatable processes in launching token. As I said before, we have the Craft Beer coin right now, we will have the Craft Water coin, and eventually the Craft Food coin. Now there are certain mechanics on how you can launch these tokens. One well understood mechanic so far is the ICO, the initial coin offering. The only problem with the initial coin offering is that plenty of people have tried to do an ICO and it wasn't always a great success. So one could say it has been a bit taunted. The next one is the STO, or the security token offering, and as it's in the name, it talks about securities. So one could argue that an asset-backed utility token, same as ours, is effectively a security, but there is no regulatory framework that describes clearly whether it actually is or isn't. So for now, we assume that we're doing an ICO. We will be doing ICOs for the Craft Beer coin, for example, but we are striving to do an STO as early as we can, as early as the regulatory framework is in place, which currently isn't the case. An intermediary step is the virtual financial asset, the VFA, which has come to life through the VFA Act by the MFSA, by the Maltese Financial Services Authority, which is basically a copy of some of the SEC's requirements around securities. Now that's very technical, but what it effectively means is that it gets more security, more safety for the investors, for the people that buy the token, so that people are actually quite secure when they have these tokens. Now, do they need to be that secure when they have a token that's always backed by a pint of beer? That's for you to decide. The last thing that we have as an option is the IEO, the initial exchange offering, which is all the vogue right now. The challenge with the IEO is that it is effectively like an ICO, rather unregulated, and it bears the same hallmarks as an ICO and potentially the same risks. So we'll see what we'll do about that, but it is an option that we'll consider for future releases. Effectively, the plan, why we've done all of this, is to create alternative financing mechanisms. I talked initially about the success of German craft and that being the foundation for the Craft Coin company, for its inception. I also talked about the limitation, and one of the limitations was clearly the financing mechanisms that are in place today. The options that you currently have are, for example, to go for a seed funding round, to go for institutional investment, VCs, PEs, once you've exhausted your friends and family, or to go public, potentially. So the options that we're having in that space are quite limited. Once you've exhausted friends and family, once you've done all these things, you either pay 6, 7, 8% for a bank, or you give away quite a big chunk of your equity, or you look for alternatives. One of the challenges that small and medium-sized enterprises have are that the bank fees are quite expensive and the alternatives are not readily available. So what we were working on creating were alternative funding mechanisms, because the existing funding mechanisms weren't working well enough. Banks are overcharging, friends and family are exhausted at some point in time, not just for us but for SMEs in general, and institutional investors don't typically invest in small and medium-sized enterprises. So one of the ideas that we had, and the driving factor, the driving motivation behind all of this, was to create alternative funding mechanisms. Once you've exhausted friends and family, once you found that banks were overcharging fees, once you've realized that you're a tiny bit too small for institutional investors, you are left with little choices. So what we thought was a good idea was actually create our own cryptocurrency, create our own currency effectively, and therefore create our own value chains that we can then dig into. By doing so, we are able to shape our own future because we hold all the cards in our hands. With the big advantage being that we can now support independent companies that create artisan craft products, independent companies that are not necessarily of a specific size, but we are scalable. We can support a small mom and pop shop, we can support a field and first mile production, we can support someone that is refining a product, or we can actually support a bigger producer as long as this is our requirement, he follows certain ethical standards. So the way we're doing this should be different. Now that we're creating our own currency, we also want to behave differently. One of the reasons why we started doing this was so that we can replicate some of the ideas around sustainability as they are currently implemented at German Craft. German Craft is extremely careful how they consume their energy, they're creating their own water, they're doing lots and lots of things for the community, giving back in multiple forms. We as Craft Coin Company wanted to replicate that. The way how we did that was by starting out as a B Corp. One of the first things we did was hire an individual that is solely in charge of our sustainability and sustainability operations. We have registered as a B Corp. We are status B Corp pending because we aren't 1 year old. We can't be a B Corp yet, but that's work in progress. And we are very, very keen on doing the right things for the right reasons. So when we're talking to new ventures, to new companies, we want them to follow that idea, to follow that logic and the same ethical pattern. We would like our partners to follow similar patterns and similar ideas as we have them. So one of the ideas is that we are trying to near source as much as possible. Another one is that we're trying to follow the idea of circular, reusing the material, reusing the energy as many times as we possibly can. And then we follow the idea of the zero-mile economy, which means that we're producing on-site and selling on-site. These are a few requirements that we have for our partner companies, which we would like them to pursue. Additionally, we are very keen on the right use of data. We understand that data is the new gold, but we also understand the risks involved with data. By registering as a B Corp, we're actually accepting a certain level of higher responsibility for the use of data. And we have from the very beginning agreed that we're going to do everything in our power not to misuse the data. And as you can imagine, it's very sensitive data when we're talking about foods and drinks. So what we're doing on the data side is that we're trying to be extremely careful how we use the data. One of the reasons why we registered as a B Corp and now have the B Corp pending status is that we accept that responsibility for data from the food and beverage space. As you can imagine, this is data that people would really like to get their hands on, and we need to do everything in our power that they can't, that we keep that secure and that we keep that safe for you. If you're interested in learning more, then please do follow us on all the social media channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Like, share, and please do join us every last Wednesday of the month at the Beer and Blockchain Club here at Mercato Metropolitano in London. Thank you very much for your time.